it happened to me to struggle to recognize internally some of my emotions or core needs as if I'm not able to distinguish or name some nuances between them. Do you have any suggestions on how to work on that to become better at listening to my inner voices? Again, what you're actually addressing here, and this is probably common for all of us, is not so much identification, but translation. You see, we know how we feel because we experience it, correct? What we then do is try to put a label on it so that we feel that we know what we're experiencing. Now, that can be very useful when it comes to identifying certain emotions if you want to look or spot at patterns or disarm them, as per for those EMFs in the house, module 4, where we talk about the ways to disarm negative emotions. But don't get too caught up in the ability to, as I say, recognize internally some of the core emotions or core needs. And if you try to label it, you move yourself back into intellect. And you don't live from your intellect. You figure life out and you figure out how to live, or you try to from your intellect. But what you're essentially trying to progress to with levels of emotional maturity and evolution is living more from being and less from intellect. In other words, it's very similar. We mentioned the speed reading earlier. Right? It's a similar kind of analogy. Let me explain. Why do people read slowly? Because they read with their wrong sense. Yeah, they read with their ears. That's how we've been taught to read in school. So we see the words, we say the words to ourselves in our head, and then we listen to what those words are, and we give meaning to the sound, not the symbol. Which is why it's slow. It's why the brain's bored out of its mind. That's why you can't remember what it is that you read 2 paragraphs ago, and why you sometimes read because you want to go to sleep because the brain says, I'm out of here. Right? That's kind of the simple version as to how it's done. And there's 2 reasons why we tend to read like that. One is because it validates to the teachers that we actually know what we're doing, so that we read out loud so that they can hear us, and we're not just telling them, yeah, I read all that in my head, it was great. But the other reason is because let's just say the syllabus that's been created for us to be parts of the system. Bear in mind, education is a very recent development in humanity in terms of for the masses. Isn't designed to keep you or make you into a super genius. It's designed to make you read enough so that you can follow instructions. So when it comes to speed reading, if you parallel that against how you drive a car, could you imagine driving a car like you read a book? You see something, and then you have to talk to yourself about it to understand what it is. I see a traffic light that's changing to red. I see brake lights in the car in front of me, therefore I need to slow down. I see pedestrians that are crossing the road. I need to take different action than what. If you were sub-vocalizing everything that happened at driving, your insurance premiums are going to be pretty high. Why? Because you're essentially using your ears to drive. Follow me? So you don't do it when you're driving. You see hundreds of pieces of dynamic, constantly shifting information that you see, instantly understand, know, and act on without the sub-vocalization. So you can do it. You do it all the time. But for some reason, when we pick up a book, we start blah, 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 blah. Because we've been taught and trained to actually translate, the traffic light that we see and understand into the word traffic light. And then we only know it's a traffic light if we tell ourselves in our head it's a traffic light, right? So, as we start to engage with reality at a higher level, you shift the ratio from intellect to being. And the more you do that, the more you realize you don't have to internally label or recognize or distinguish, because you just start to know how you feel. Again, a tiger doesn't sit there and say, I'm hungry. I think I'll go and hunt. What shall I have today? Yeah. I wonder if that juicy monkey in the tree, right, is available. It doesn't have those conversations. It just knows it's hungry, It doesn't internalize the language pattern. It acts on the impulses and the feelings that it gets, that it's very much in touch with from a being level, not an intellect level. Everybody follow? So remember, the mind can never know. The mind can only know about. In being, you know. That's why you go to sleep at night with a problem, you wake up, you know the answer. You didn't sit up all night with a pen and a pad trying to figure out the equation. Or you get in the shower and you have an idea. Why? Because you're relaxed. It's not so often you talk to yourself when you get in the shower under the warm water, you go, and you just be for that brief, glorious minute or two, right, where there's nobody around, you're enjoying the water, the body's relaxed, and boom, ideas come in. Because now you're in touch with the intuition side, you're in touch with the being side. Mm-hmm. I see people in restaurants. If I'm eating in an expensive restaurant, for example, and I look around, you've got people who are paying through the nose for not so much Michelin stars. I don't like that because they like to starve people with fancy small designs on plates, pretending to be food, right? But yeah, I don't like walking out of a Michelin star restaurant like I did the last one, right? Spending $500 and then go get a pizza or something because you're freaking starving. But you sit in a nice restaurant, you watch somebody eating, and they're talking on, to themselves. They're fiddling on their phone, or they're just not present. They may as well be eating at a cafe. It's a great way to get to being is to be present with your food. That's a great way to train, especially if it's from the place of appreciation, where it's just like, okay, I'm going to explore how many flavors can I feel. Yeah. In the next mouthful, what can I, and you just shift yourself and start living a little more in being and less in intellect. And then when it says distinguish between nuances between them, you won't have to distinguish anything. You'll just know.